Have you contacted the protest group made up of residents in Hackney and Tower Hamlets that are protesting about the missiles being put on their flats? The roof of the block of the flats?
No, I haven't, but I did an interview with Russia Today, I think last week maybe, I can't remember. So much has happened, it's all a bit kind of fluid. But I did an interview with Russia Today about that very thing, that people had missiles on their flats and stuff like that. And I said, well, don't worry about that. That's the least of your problems, because they're going to walk a bomb straight into that venue. You know, why bother having missiles on roofs when really your security is so bad that you know you could walk a bomb in or gun in or anything. You know, they're not going to fly anything in, are they? It's theatre. It's the military putting on a show. It's, you know, that's what those missiles are for. Yeah, it's theatre. It scares all of us because we don't want to see the military-industrial complex come out onto our streets. Do you know what I mean? And put missiles up or anything like that. It scares the hell out of everybody, and rightly so. It should do. You know, your military should never be allowed to be used in your country on home soil, right? But that rule doesn't exist here. It does in America. And obviously it's gone out the window now, very recently, the posse comitatus rule. But, you know, we don't have it here. But we know we've got a good police force, so it shouldn't be necessary. So it scares everybody to have those missiles. And when I gave this interview earlier, I said, well, there's no point having those missiles up there because bombs can be walked in through the front door. You know, and G4S haven't answered those questions. You know, everything that I have said has not been denied by G4S or the government or anybody, because it's the truth. So, you know...
and then of course all this ineptitude could be almost deliberate. If say, you go along with some people who might present the theory of a false flag terrorism event that could happen.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it could be.
Has anyone discussed that with you at all?
Oh, in the media, yeah, sure. Lou Collins, great radio show. Actually, I need to give Lou a really big plug because if it wasn't for Tony Gosling and for Lou Collins' radio show, both of their radio shows, none of this would have come out. You know, and I wouldn't be sitting here with you because you know the great Tony Gosling. So really, that's the that's a big thank you out to them. Sorry, I forgot the question. What was the question again? Has anyone discussed about the false flag stuff?
What do you think about this scenario yourself?
I've recently been doing a story on the recently over the past couple of years on collusion with IRA terrorists and the British government, and we learned that the modus operandi of this country is to take British soldiers, they kick them out of the army. They say, yeah, but you're still working for the army and we want you to do special training. They get put back in to the IRA. They're Irish. They're taken from the local population and into the army, out into do special training, and then they put back into the IRA. And then they work their way up or do what they do. And this is what went on during the IRA years, and still to a certain degree continues to do so, because and they had a unit set up called the Force Research Unit, or the FRU for short, right? And they trained up in Northern Ireland, and this was a spy network, and it's a simple spy network, but that went from the highest levels of the IRA echelons, right, all the way down, right? And my contact was, I think, fourth in command of the IRA, who was telling me exactly how it worked, showing me all the places that they went to and how they were taught, introducing me to SAS handlers whose job it was to look after these guys once they're inside the IRA, you know, to give them reports and then tell them what to do and all that kind of stuff. He also said about being put on flights, going to America, being trained by the FBI, in how to explode bombs using an infrared flash, photography flash, coming back, then teaching the IRA how to do that. Right? So there was a standing joke where he basically said that, you know, people would say, are there any IRA in the IRA? You know, it was all British people, which obviously had bigger implications because when you had a so-called, the IRA had a squad in there called the Nutting Squad, and their job was to root out spies, except two of the people that ran, or three of the people that were involved in the Nutting Squad were British spies, and they were killing British soldiers all the time.
They killed their own.
They killed their own. Yeah, because you can't admit that you're a spy, right? So you don't know that the guy's over there is a spy, and he's not going to admit he's a spy, and you're not going to admit you're a spy, right? If they find out some evidence against you that you're a spy, he might have been being told by his handlers that that guy was a spy, simply so that he would build up his own credibility within the organisation. That guy's really great. He gets spies. He finds all these British agents, right? You never know. That's why collusion is such a bad thing, and we found it in Northern Ireland. So there's no reason to think that they're going to do anything differently. You know, we know they're doing that in Iraq and Afghanistan. This is just how they operate around the world. It's part of warfare. It's how to fight a war. There's absolutely no reason to think that they won't do that for the Olympics if they're using the Olympics as a precursor to something else. Because the Olympics is just one big media event. And some people said, oh, well, they'll use a nuclear weapon. Well, they won't use a nuclear weapon, because with a nuclear weapon you get an electromagnetic pulse that knocks out all the electronics. None of the TV cameras will work. So this nuclear bomb goes off in the heart of London for the Olympics, and nobody around the world will ever see it. Even your stills cameras, they'll burn up. You know, everything will. You know, and for miles and miles around. So that's not going to work. It might look like a nuclear bomb, but it wouldn't be one, right? There's these big air fuel bombs they can use. They've got a range of 300 metres. They look exactly the same as a nuclear weapon, except they're not. They don't go nuclear. They don't knock any of the buildings down. They just basically kill all of us and what have you. So, you know, like a big napalm bomb, it's very similar. So you might have that. So this is, you know, look, there's always these kind of concerns of whether governments will do this. We know they do it, yeah? It's whether they're going to use the Olympics. If there's a bigger picture that we're not seeing, it could be possible, say, invasion of Iran, say, for example, where they want to have a false flag operation and then say, Iran has bombed London Olympics and now we're going to invade Iran, right? That could be a possibility. It's always, false flags are always done really as precursors to something else. So that might even be subtle. Even in Northern Ireland, when another friend of mine who was in the army in Northern Ireland, he was in 2-para, he would be ordered away from a checkpoint, or he'd say, move your men, you know, back to the base tonight, you're not going to be there, right? And he said every time that happened to us, a bomb would go off or someone would get killed. Right? So he knew what was going on, right? And he got frustrated because he's like, well, hold on a minute, how do you know this is going to happen? We're supposed to be here to stop these guys. He believed really, you know, in everything, right? So we know this goes on, this happens and stuff like that. If we can work out the bigger picture, is there a bigger picture? Then there might be, you're onto something. If you can't think of a bigger picture, then they're not going to blow it up just for the sake of it, because it's always about doing something else. You know, curtailing your civil liberties that little bit, which is what they were doing in Northern Ireland. You know, every time someone got killed or a bomb went off, the general population, those walls went up. The helicopters came, you know, whatever it is, they added something else onto it. Unless they're going to, you know, I mean, as far as I can see, when they mentioned about the evacuation of London, what sprung into my mind wasn't so much of a false flag, or it was a false flag, but with a kind of, I suppose, a two-pronged attack on us. One way would be, to say, you know, Iran's done it, let's go to war with Iran. Once everyone's out of London, they've been talking about getting people who are, you know, council tenants out of London, right? Clearing areas. Greenwich is deemed to be kind of like a posh area, right? And they want the council riffraff, as someone called them, out, yeah? Well, this could be a way of getting everybody out of London and then only letting back into London the people that you want to have back in.
If they evacuated London, how would the Londoners then come back into London?
Well, they wouldn't let certain people in. They'd only let, you know, people who are the bankers and the people who are going to service the bankers, or you could select groups of people to come back into London then, i.e. rich people. So London could just be just for very, very wealthy people, and that would be that. Everyone else would be moved around the country, I guess, you know. That's a theory. But the thing is...
What would you say if somebody said that it sounds too far-fetched?
Yeah, probably. But, you know, I have a, you know... the thing is, I'm quite a paranoid person in a way, because I deal on stories, you know, about people who generally just want to lie to me every day. So I have to think of, okay, you're lying to me, but why? There's always a bigger picture. For the same reason as they do a false flag operation, and they do them. We know they do them. You know, that's part of the modus operandi of the world, really. Britain and American intelligence services do them. But you've got to see the bigger picture as to what would they be getting out of it, because it's never just to kill us. They can kill us any day of the week if they want to, and they're doing that. All they've got to do is invent an organisation called NICE and say, oh, you got a brain tumour, sorry, can't afford it. That's it, you're dead. One down, 10 million more to go. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So it's always about what they're getting out of it, and you know what? Sometimes time will tell. Maybe because we're all talking about it now. And it is hitting the mainstream slowly. We are getting somewhere with this. That maybe they're going to change their plans, or maybe their plans are so far advanced that nothing's going to change them, no matter what anyone says. Even if we actually found the smoking gun sitting there and the nuclear weapon also buried in the complex, they still wouldn't change their plans because it's too far ahead and it involves too many other things. Maybe not.
Talking about
So
the
time will
Olympic
tell.
Stadium, I think I heard a rumour that some of there's some things underneath the Olympic Stadium that are unexploded bombs or something from the Second World War they haven't cleared or something like that.
Was,
do you know anything about that?
Originally, that area was a part of we kept our nuclear arsenal there, and nuclear waste and things like that in that ground, which is why when they decided to build the stadium there, and they had to dig up the ground, they spent so much money on actually having to really retreat that soil in that area because the radiation levels were really too high. So they had to spend a lot more money preparing the ground before they were even allowed to build on it. So in theory, you could have, if the ground radiation is quite high, in theory, by planting quite a large air bomb, or dropping an air bomb, rather, you could perhaps, cause yourself to have a dirty bomb. But I guarantee you it won't be a nuclear bomb because they'll want to film it. Like 9/11, what would be the point of 9/11 if no one saw it? Really? Do you know what I mean? And I didn't realise when I was watching 9/11, I was just shocked like everybody else. But when you actually think about it, all those cameras are perfect position. I'm a drama director, I direct drama, You'd think, actually, you covered it really well. I wonder how that happened, right? So, that's suspicious in itself. Usually when things are spontaneous, the lone bomber, which really never happens. It may have happened once or twice, perhaps, once maybe I can think of an occasion in my lifetime where a lone bomber actually did exist. And people don't film it. People don't record it. Maybe the victims do.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show,
You're very welcome.
Bedfellows, and hopefully you'll come on the show another time.
I'd love to. I've really enjoyed meeting you all, and thank you for having me, and thank you for just being interested in this story. It's really important, and we need to get it out as far as possible. So thank you for doing your job.